All right, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at soft selection, also called Falloff in some programs, and inside of Blender it's called proportional editing. So what is this? So if we are in a program like Lightwave and we select maybe, let's say, this one vertice and we hit move, and then we begin to move up on the y-axis here, you can see that we're only really influencing that one vertice that we actually have selected. But there's a way for us to utilize a tool that not only moves that one vertice, but moves vertices all the way around it with a lessening degree of influence. And in Lightwave, that's called Falloff. So if we use a tool called Dragnet, and you see here that I click and drag, you can see now that really I'm impacting that top vertice, but going down the rest of the geometry, lesser and lesser, is having a less impact or less influence all the way down the geometry. That amount of influence in the geometry is controlled through this fall off, and if I tap the N key to bring up the numeric panel, you can see that I've got this radius and then the overall shape of the fall off that I can control in here. And I can right click and drag to interactively adjust this overall area of influence, and then have an effect ultimately on on the shape of my deformations. And it basically makes working with lower poly geometry, maybe where you don't need sculpting tools like ZBrush or inside of Blender, easy to make a quick adjustment to the overall shape of your object. Inside of Maya, we have the same basic thing. So if I go into vertex select mode and I grab this top vertex and I move that up on the y-axis, you're going to see that it only grabs that single vertice. But if I double click the move tool and I come down to soft selection and enable that, now I get a visual feedback showing that the area that will be most impacted is the yellow area, and then as it falls off down to this black area, it will be least impacted. So as I click and drag now, you can see that I've got this very nice organic type of deformation going on. Okay, we can do the exact same thing inside of Blender. So if I jump over to Blender and I click on my object and I jump into edit mode, click to deselect, and now I select that top vertice. I go into the move tool and I click up on the z-axis. This begins to behave exactly like Lightwave, Modo, Maya, 3D Studio Max, etc. Okay, if I want that fall off, I have to come up here to the top, and with this circle with a dot in it, that is called proportional editing. And if I click and turn that on and then drag again, you're going to see that I get the exact same effect as I was getting from Maya and from Lightwave. All right, so this allows you to have a nice organic sort of fall off. Now, how do we adjust the overall area of influence? Well, inside of Lightwave, it was right-clicking and dragging, and inside of Maya, we had that slider that we could adjust to make our overall soft selection area larger or smaller. Okay. Over inside of Blender, this is done by clicking and dragging so that we begin the deformation, and then using the mouse wheel to wheel up to create a smaller area of influence, or down to create a broader area of influence. Okay, so we get that visual feedback, but that's only available as I'm clicking and dragging. If I let go and middle mouse wheel, I'm zooming in and zooming out. Okay, so click, drag, and then use your middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. All right. So there are a few options in terms of proportional editing inside of Blender. If we come over here to the right of that little proportional editing option and we take a look by clicking, you can see there are an entire range of shapes that we can, preset shapes that we can pick from. So defaults to smooth. If we choose something like sharp, for example, and click and drag up, we get something that looks like a water drop or a teardrop coming down. So very easy to get these what otherwise would be very tedious types of shapes to create through the proportional editing tools. Okay. Now we do have two other options, two checkbox options up here at the top. One is connected only, and the other is project from view. Let's start with project from view. So if I tap A to select everything, and I hit Shift D to duplicate and pull that over. Now I've got two bits of geometry, but they're not connected. The vertices are not welded or fused or merged together. But if I click and drag, you're going to notice that I'm impacting both bits of geometry, and that might be exactly what you want. But you may only want to impact this bit of geometry here and not the other one that's not connected. Okay, in that particular case, you want to come up to the options and choose connected only. And once you do that, only the geometry that has the vertices fused, welded, or merged together, depending on what vernacular you're used to, only those will get impacted. Okay. Now, if we go back out to object mode, I'll press X to delete those, Shift A, and then add a grid in. I want to show one more option in here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into edit mode for this. And in this particular case, I'll grab this one point right here. And as I begin to move that up along the Z-axis, okay, you can see that it begins to fall off from that one point. Okay, now let's go ahead and change this back to smooth real quick, just for this example. Okay, now if I wanted all of this to be impacted, right, I really then am going to have to select all of these vertices. If I don't want the fall off here to stop at this point, I'm going to have to select all of the vertices like this, and then begin to pull up. And that's going to give me the ability to do these sort of larger slopes over the entire surface of the geometry. Okay, now that's totally fine as long as I'm working in this sort of perspective 3D viewport. If I'm looking down one of the orthographic views, however, let's say for example, I look down the y-axis and I want to impact this vertex here. If I were to click that and drag up, really, I'm just lifting that one vertex and everything begins to fall off, which then means I'm going to have to select all of the vertices and then come back to that viewport again, let's say the Y viewport, and make the adjustment from there. Okay, so there's an easier way to do this than just coming through and selecting every single one of these vertices and then looking back down the axis again and making your change. All right, and that is to enable project from view mode. And so when we have project from view, what that's basically doing is it's ignoring the depth and only looking at the axes that you have visible. So let's again look down the y-axis by clicking on that. It's basically looking at these vertices right here. So if I click that one vertex, even that, only though that one vertex is currently selected, let's go ahead and wrap that around like that. There we go. Even though that one is the only one currently selected, once we have project from view turned on, it will treat all the vertices that are in line with that view as though they've been selected, right? So it basically ignores the depth and says, all right, you have one vertex selected here. That's totally fine. I'm still going to treat it as though all the vertices were connected and allow you to make your adjustments. And that just makes it quicker when you're doing things like this, so that you don't have to jump in and out or make sure that you're going through and selecting all the vertices. You can just click and drag, click and drag. All right, so I hope that's been helpful in explaining soft selection and proportional editing. And until the next time, good luck and happy blending.